George, tell us why spaceports. Just a quick graphic. We have a huge budget here at Space. As
The
Space
space
guys.
economy spares no expense. Awesome.
Yeah. So it's our rocket ship. So airplanes take off this way. They require like a mile, 2 miles worth of runway, particularly for the big airplanes. Horizontal launch versus vertical. Spaceports, they do the vertical thing, which means they have a much smaller footprint, but you still have to coordinate with the airplanes that might be in your flight path. That said, now that we've expended all of our budget for props on this episode, George, tell us why spaceports are going to be the future seaports, airports of just the world.
Certainly. So the seaports were the hub of economic activity as trade took out throughout both Europe and Asia at relatively similar time periods. And what we saw is because these were commercial centers, because this is where goods were both coming and being received from. And at the same time, this is also where the trade houses, the businesses, the banking all developed as an ecosystem around to support those seaports. With airports, we have seen something similar. I'm not sure, how much aerospace economics and aerospace development people look into for smart cities or people who enjoy reading that kind of stuff like I do. But what you can generally see is the part of the airport that you and I go to, or I should really say that Professor Williams goes to mostly because he's always at an airport, um, is is really representing maybe about 10% of the airport, right? The guts of the airport, which is essentially a city unto itself, most of us never get to see. That has the ability to support and already supports a lot of transportation activities. So whether that's DHL, FedEx, UPS, the like, that's all done on the back end. You probably don't get to see that when you're just commercially traveling with your family, but that infrastructure in place will be paralleled in what we will see with spaceports. So getting more goods and stuff and services and people to provide services into space will take place at spaceports. That infrastructure build out will be the same way. There'll be that 10% that's shiny that a lot of us will get to see because of space tourists. And I have no interest in talking about space tourism. I think it's exhausted now at this point in the news cycle. But the, but the real interesting thing is as the cost per kilogram continues to come down, we can afford to put more and more stuff into orbit, and that stuff will take place at spaceports. And the synergies, or sometimes we call them economic conglomerations. So that's not on your test. Economic conglomerations.
Economic conglomerate. That was not on my word today, but
No.
continue.
You also see it sometimes as amalgamations. But what you'll see is what happens is you have these synergies, and because people who are all in developing and all working on the same goals around space commercialization are now in closer contact with each other at a center. So a great example of one of these is Tech Space in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
They're working at setting up a center where people who are working on a lot of different facets of aerospace, space, and space economy be able to come together and have a community which shares ideas, shares resources, and develops a spaceport. And that'll just be one of many.
I love it. I love it. So just remember, spaceports are the future. Right now, airports, transportation, cargo ships, because actually it's a good point. So you have ships, is going to be my ship. It's in the water, right? It's in the water. But I got a blue shirt on. It makes sense. We're running. Hey,
our production budget. Man,
we run a lean business here. So you got ships on the water. And the only purpose of ships, I was just reading about the Portuguese man of wars that they built in India and sent to Japan in the 1580s. They were black because of the hulls were built in India from the native wood that was also black. So you had these giant black ships that rolled up into the ports in India. They were to carry cargo. And so ships' original purpose is to carry cargo. Then we got airplanes. The purpose of airplanes, not for passengers, is for the cargo underneath. And then for very similar for when we're talking about rocket launches, nanosats, etc. The spaceports will again, it's for carrying cargo into orbit so they can do the business that is the business of space, which is collecting data and sharing and disseminating that data, whatever forms it might take. So just keep that in mind. I promise you by our next episode, we will have increased our budget so that now we have different color rocket ships we talk about space and space launch. So that's it for the moment. Thanks for joining us here on the Space Economy, your destination for the business of space. And if you want to sponsor us, that's fine. Specifically, if your name is Under Armour, because I have your shirt on today. But if you're a space-based business, you can also sponsor us. But till then, be well. See everybody in the next episode. Peace.